Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tell Me About Your Dog. I'm Sam. I'm a CVT from Florida, here currently in Manhattan. I'm a pet insurance advocate and a lover of all things senior pets. I have a very special guest joining me today, Miss Nicole. Thank you so much for coming on Tell Me About Your Dog.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am the founder of Rescue Spot, a new pet adoption platform. I've also worked in the rescue world for over 16 years. I was a volunteer. I worked at various shelters. I was the director of the shelter, and then I had my own nonprofit dog rescue. So I've kind of done everything in the rescue world, and now I've turned my attention to the pet tech side of rescue.
Very cool. What got you involved in the nonprofit world to start?
Well, I was an actress and a singer in high school in movies and TV shows, and I had an experience. Well, I guess I'll just jump right into it because it all kind of ties together. I had an experience one day where I went to a pet store and saw a very small little Pomeranian. And, I didn't know that much about rescuing animals. I just knew that I loved animals. I always had pets growing up. They were kind of my only friends as a kid. And so I went into a pet store and I saw that there was a little Pomeranian who seemed very sick. She was super thin, almost seizing, like just shaking. And I don't know, it just stuck with me. So I kept going back to this pet store over and over again. I grew up in Manhattan, so it was in the city. And I started like calling the ASPCA and different shelters and saying, there's this tiny puppy. She's really sick. Can you do something about her? And then I would tell them the price of her and they'd kind of laugh and hang up the phone and be like, okay, like we're going to spend thousands on a dog to buy when we're a rescue or shelter. And so eventually I raised the money to buy her, and she spent about a month and a half in the hospital because she really was very sick. She had developed liver shunts. They weren't feeding her, so she'd stay small so they could charge more money. And that really changed my life and got me into rescue because it just opened my eyes to the horrors of puppy mills and pet stores and backyard breeders, and just kind of changed my life in one short weekend.
Aw. How did buying a puppy compared to your later experience of adopting a dog?
Well, buying her, was definitely quick and easy, but it came with a lifelong set of challenges. She was immediately sick, as I mentioned, and she shouldn't have survived. I mean, she was tiny, and the vet ended up having to have the vet tech take her home every single night for a month because she just wouldn't have survived the night on her own. And then after that, she had years of seizures. She couldn't be left alone for more than 2 hours because she'd start having hypoglycemic attacks. So she really needed care. Whereas with adoption, often, pets are a lot healthier because they're mixed breed, and the adoption process was very difficult, which also kind of changed my life. So I'm glad that it was a difficult adoption process because it got me to where I am today. But at the end of the day, it was just so much more worth it. I knew that, there wasn't cruelty behind my decision with like a backyard breeder or funding puppy mills and whatnot. And so, yeah, it ended up being the best of both worlds with both options.
Definitely. So speaking of adopting, your other dog inspired a little bit of your rescue work. So, Nicole, tell me about your dog.
Yeah. So I have Tribeca and Gatsby. Tribeca's since passed, but they are the two major dogs in my life that, amongst many dogs, that really changed my path. So Tribeca, as I mentioned, I bought from the pet store. Later on, a few months later, very quickly thereafter, I decided that I wanted to dedicate some of my life to working with animals, volunteering. But because I was an actress, I wasn't able to go to a shelter and commit weekly. And so I started a little nonprofit where I was like, oh, I'll be a matchmaker for people that want to buy a pet, but I'm going to convince them to adopt a pet instead. And so I did that for many years where I would say, oh, you're looking to buy a dog. Why don't I find you a Pomeranian or a Yorkie in a shelter instead? And so I ended up filling out tens of thousands of applications to adopt pets throughout a few years. And during that time, I really learned how difficult the adoption process was. People weren't responding back to my emails. I would send out applications and I wouldn't hear back for weeks. And when I did hear back, the pet had already been adopted. And, it was a very frustrated process. And to be quite honest, it ended up ending with a lot of people deciding to go to a pet store or breeder instead because they were just so frustrated. Exactly. It's easier. They were emotionally exhausted. They'd see a dog and I'd say, oh, what about this one? They get excited and then they'd never hear back. So it was a lot of people that had good intention and ended up having to buy because they just weren't able to get a pet. Later on, a little bit later on, I went to adopt a pet myself, Gatsby, who's the love of my life. He's a 15-year-old, now 15, golden retriever cocker spaniel mix. And when I decided to get him, my 2 childhood dogs had just passed away, a golden retriever and a black lab. And I was heartbroken and, I really wanted to get another big dog because I had my 2 little dogs, but a big dog. And so I started looking online and doing this whole adoption process that I'd done for so many other people.
You became the person doing
it
it
for myself. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this should be easy. I know all the tricks. I'll have my document. I'll follow up every day. I'll call them. And it was so difficult, and I really was able to see like, oh my gosh, this is heartbreaking. I'm getting so excited. I'm not hearing back. Am I going to go to a breeder? Am I going to have to go to a pet store because I just can't get a pet? I have a wonderful open home for them. And it was just so disheartening, the process. And finally, with Gatsby, I did hear back from a rescue that I'd applied to probably 3 weeks before. And finally heard back. And after so much heartbreak and thinking, okay, I'm going to have to just give up and I guess just not get a dog. And I was able to adopt him and, it was incredible and totally changed my life. So after that experience, I decided that I really wanted to fully commit my life to working with animals. So I put my acting sort of on hold. I still did a little bit, but really I focused on working in rescues. So I started volunteering, then I started working for various rescues in Manhattan. Like I mentioned, I became the head of one. And then finally I decided, okay, I know basically everything I need to know to start my own rescue. Now I'm going to start my own foster-based rescue. And so I ran that. It was called Chic Chien Chateau.
Try saying that 10 times fast.
Exactly. I did not think about the fact that I was starting a 501c3 nonprofit and was going to have to call the IRS day in and day out and try and explain to them how to spell my French dog rescue called Chic Chien Chateau. But I started it and we raised tons of money to have a special medical needs fund because of Tribeca, the sick Pomeranian that I had. And, with that medical needs fund, we were able to get so many dogs pulled from high kill shelters where they were set to be euthanized because maybe they had cancer or they needed a tumor removed, they needed a limb removed, they had a skin condition. And so we would say, no, we're going to pull that pet, get it through our medical needs program, and then get them adopted. And we got so many of these incredible pets adopted that were literally on death's door, about to be euthanized because the high kill shelters, they weren't able to commit the time or money to getting them back in health.
That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
And tell us about Rescue Spot.
So during COVID, we had to put our rescue on hold like many others did because all of our dogs came from Georgia and the chain of like transport trucks weren't running. So I decided that finally I was going to fix the adoption process that was so difficult because at this point I'd now been running my own rescue and working for other rescues for like 10 years. So I was used to the other side of the coin as to like why it was so difficult for people to adopt. And these rescues are completely run by volunteers. They're overworked. They're overwhelmed with all of the applications and phone calls and calling references. And the softwares and technologies that were out there really weren't solving the problems. They were kind of more making more issues, complicated to use. And it was almost like they were made by people that were like, oh, these are the problems you should have. But I, as a rescuer, was like, well, no, these are not solving the problems that I actually have. So I decided to, of course, pivot and start working on the technical side of rescue, which is how I created Rescue Spot. And what Rescue Spot is it's a pet adoption platform for adopters and a shelter management software for rescues and shelters. The big thing with Rescue Spot is that adopters are able to search and match and apply to adopt or foster hundreds of thousands of pets nationwide, and they use a one-time universal application. So
Wow,
you fill it
that's
out
incredible.
once. Thank you. It just takes so much work and makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
So, you fill out this application one time. It takes maybe 10 minutes, and then you can apply to as many pets as you want. And you can also apply to foster. So we are the first fostering website out there where you can see fosterable pets in your area, and you can also apply to them. And then with Rescue Spot, we really just make it your one spot to adopt. So you can instant message with the rescues. You can see the status of your application. So after you submitted it, it's not like, okay, did they read it? Did they get it? Did they not get it?
There's not a waiting game they have to play and
Exactly.
question if they actually went
Exactly.
through or not.
You
They get
can
to see in
see-
real time.
Yep, you can see, oh, my application's been opened. Oh, someone else adopted a pet. I better go and try to adopted that pet. I better go and try to find a new pet, or I've been approved, or they have a question. You're able to sign all of the adoption contracts, purchase pet insurance, which is very important nowadays, download all the medical records, volunteer, and really just do everything from A to Z
Yeah.
with pet adoption. And then for rescues, it's complete shelter management software. So we take a process that would take a medium-sized rescue like 30 hours a week between uploading and keeping pets up to date, finding fosters, checking references, and we boil it down to less than 45 minutes of work a week. So.
Yeah. You've made an all-in-one platform that takes care of all the problems that previously rescues have had a lot of issues with.
Yes, exactly. I was so frustrated with the whole process. I was like, okay, this is
You're like,
gotta
I'm so
change."
frustrated with this. I'm just going to fix it myself.
Exactly. Exactly.
What do you think are still some of the biggest challenges that rescues deal with?
I think fostering is becoming much more popular. When you get a pet in a shelter, or when a pet ends up in a shelter, it's scary, it's cold, it's loud. You don't really know that much about the pet, because a pet usually in a shelter is going to shut down. They're not going to show you their true personality. They're also not around people all the time to show their true personality. They're not interacting with children, with the outside world, with other animals. And so it's really difficult to find the right fit for shelter pets, because they might be really great with kids, but they've just acted scared in the shelter or barked a lot in the shelter, or they might not be great with kids and they might seem okay, but a few weeks later you find out, oh, they're a little shy around kids, or they don't like someone, coming up to them too quickly.
Information that's needed to be known.
Exactly. And that's difficult to find in a shelter atmosphere. So many shelters and rescues are going towards foster-based models where the pets are able to go into a home, show the foster their true personality, have time to decompress, and then the foster can tell the rescue, and the rescue can find the best possible fit for that pet, which in turn decreases the amount of pets that are returned. The issue is that it's hard to find fosters. There aren't, until Rescue Spot, there aren't websites that just show you fosterable pets in your area. Rescues have to go on to like Facebook and Instagram and, put the message out on message boards to try and find fosters. And really, fosters are the lifeline of these rescues, because if you don't have enough fosters, then you can't take on any more pets.
Right.
You really, a rescue can live and die by the amount of fosters that they have. So that's something that, is really difficult for rescues. That's something that we're aiming to solve. But I don't think people realize, like, fostering is such an incredible way to give back. If you're not able to have a pet yet, it's a great way to learn about having a pet. It's a great way to have a pet for a short period of time. It's also an incredible way to show your children the responsibilities of having a pet in a short-term way, compared to, like a 14-year-old pet that you're going to have. And, then you're stuck with a 2-year-old that decides, oh, I don't want to walk the dog anymore.
It's a short-term commitment, but it's making a big impact on the lives of these dogs. Because like you said, they get exposure to other pets, children, open environments, and dogs don't thrive in shelter environments. They shut down, like you said. They cower. They're not showing their true personality. They're not able to. They don't have time to adjust. And by the time they do, they've been there a long time, and then they become labeled as the dog that's been there forever.
Exactly. Then they have a stigma around them, which is just, it's heartbreaking. If I was in a shelter, it would take me a long time in a new environment. It would take me a long time to blossom if I ever did in that kind of an environment. Obviously, shelter workers are incredible, and it's nothing against them. It's just the reality, that a home is better for a pet.
Yeah. Do you think that shelters struggle with the technicalities of these websites, message boards, things like that, because they just don't have enough help? What do you think is the problem?
Absolutely. I think it's multifaceted. I think at the heart of it, it's not having enough help, not having enough resources to hire people that will, be on top of looking for people daily, not having, volunteers that are going to show up and consistently do the less fun side of rescue and shelter work.
Mhm.
Like you're not interacting with pets, you're on the internet, which that not that many people are like, okay, I want to help dogs by going online.
Yeah.
Or cats by going online. I think a big piece of it also is just finding the right fit. So finding people that are going to be committed. A lot of times, before Rescue Spot with my rescue, when I would try and find people to foster for me and I'd have a form for them to fill out, like half the time people would say, oh, well, I can only foster for 3 days. And if something comes up, I'm just going to give the dog back. And, I'm not really committed and I don't really have approval from my landlord. There's so many people that weren't serious about it. And that takes a long time to sift through those kind of applications.
Mhm.
With Rescue Spot, we have a filtering thing that you can find the best possible fit for you. But it is a really big issue with shelters that they're not able to keep up with all of these demands. And the technologies that they have to use can be really complicated.
Mhm.
There is a shift I've found in younger people starting to get into the rescue world. When I started about 16 years ago, it was much more retired people that were doing this as kind of a second career. With social media, now there are so many young people that are starting fosters and shelters and these incredible rescues. So they are a little bit more tech savvy.
Yeah.
But we try to cater to everyone, make it easy for everyone.
So you're seeing a little bit of a shift.
Yes, absolutely.
A good shift.
A very good shift. And people really using social media for good, which is what we want to see.
Yes.
It's incredible when you see these rescues that have like hundreds of thousands of followers and, people lining up to help and give and donate and volunteer and foster.
Yeah, I love that because like you said, fostering and adopting aren't the only ways to give back and to help. You can donate your time, you can donate money, you can donate food. There's always a wish list that shelters have of things that they need at the time. So you are really solving a big problem here with building that bridge between the struggles of shelter technology not being quite up to date as it needs to be, people who want to foster, people who want to adopt. You are building a bridge between all three of those things, and that is incredible.
Thank you.
Where
Yeah.
can people find Rescue Spot if they want to learn more about you?
They can just go to rescuespot.com.
Amazing. And you have a spot that they can donate if they want to donate?
They can donate, they can foster, they can volunteer, and more importantly, they can also adopt.
Awesome. Well, if you are interested in fostering, donating, or adopting, please visit rescuespot.com to learn more about Nicole's cause. And thank you so much for coming on. Tell me about your dog. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, that is all for this episode of Tell Me About Your Dog. Please be sure to follow the show on YouTube and Spotify and follow the Instagram Tell Me About Your Dog podcast, where I would love to hear more topics you want to hear about.